So while you all make your way through, our next session, Ibrahim Al-Kazi, Holding Time Captive. Amal Alana in conversation with Kaveri Bamze.
Before we begin the conversation, we will be showing a short 6-minute film on Al-Kazi. As I try to seize memory, the reflection of the past eludes me, appearing and disappearing in snatches. Though shadowy and fragmented, my attempt is to control the past, slow it down, allowing me an opportunity to linger on those lived moments that I had but faintly registered as they were happening around me as I grew up. Writing the book allowed me to wander through the entangled landscape of Al-Kazi's passions, memorialized in his artistic endeavors, be they his stage productions, his performances, his paintings, his pedagogical skills, or the affairs of his heart that took their shape and form as a response to the social and political life that raged around him. As a result, Al-Kazi's most important theatre productions, paintings, audiovisual programs, or the art he supported spoke of the apocalyptic and senseless nature of war on the one hand, and on the other, evoked a sense of rejuvenation of the human spirit, soaring towards the creation of a new world that embraced the idea of a new universalism that included cultures from across the world. The search for the essential Al-Kazi was an exercise in recalling and at times reinventing his truths through the maze of his actions. As much as through the sparkling exuberance of his personality, his overflowing compassion for all human beings, coupled with his somewhat arrogant, self-righteous insistence on that which needed to be done. in the world of cinema, you had Urdu writers coming from the north, coming and settling down in Bombay, wanting to be part of the new film industry. The talkies had come in. You had the Werschings from Germany. You had Joseph Wersching and Franz Osten setting up Bombay Talkies, a studio in Bombay. So Bombay was just very, very cosmopolitan and alive. And it was my grandfather who was a merchant, and we've just been talking of the Chola merchants, but I'm talking of a Saudi Arab merchant who came and settled in Bombay, finding a space in what he considered to be the new world. India for him was this new and exciting world, nothing like the deserts of Saudi Arabia in those days in 1915. And settling down over there and bringing up a family over there. In the 40s and 50s, of course, I mean in the 50s onwards, of course, with the struggle for independence, there was a new kind of, the IPTA was there in Bombay, and I can't tell you, Bombay was just in a ferment, and Nalini Malani, who is sitting in the audience, comes in the 60s, being a young person who is with people like Girish Karnad, Shyam Benegal, people in Bombay, finding the spot where the new experimental activity in Bombay was happening at the Bhulabhai Desai Institute. So,
but Alkazi was not a theatre person himself, meaning that was not his background. So what was the encounter? Yes. Was it this encounter with modelism? Was it this encounter with all these extremely I suppose, inspirational cohort that actually encouraged him?
Yes. So Alkazi came to Bombay, and at St. Xavier's College, which he joined. He immediately met a young man called Sultan Padamsee, who many of you will know of Alec Padamsee. This is Alec Padamsee's eldest brother, Sultan Padamsee, who was a young man who was doing very exciting new theatre in the college, in St. Xavier's College, and had formed a small group called the Theatre Group, which still exists till today. Alkazi was very enamored with the ideas that Bobby himself, Sultan, whose name was also Bobby, Bobby had brought from him when in his travels and studies in England. So there was so much going on, and the young people wanted to create a movement. So Bobby on the one hand in theatre, the progressives on the other hand in the field of art, were trying to break boundaries and create, and they were already looking towards India as if India, even before independence, was independent. They were independent-minded.
But Alkazi continued with the family sort of business as well, did he not?
No, Alkazi did not really continue. He kind of was, he did attend his father's little trading business office in Crawford Market from time to time. And, you know, he lent his support wherever he could. Of course, he spoke excellent English, and most of the people employed in the small trading agency were Arabs. So he could help in translating certain things, writing certain official letters, etc.
I just wanted to highlight the radical sort of shifts that took place in his life. Yes. And it is something that perhaps today we don't find as surprising. People are much more mobile, they have many more choices, they exercise that choice quite freely. But you can imagine in the late 40s, for a young man like him, with a family history of business and trade, to have struck out into the arts, which was always and continues to be, sadly, a precarious kind of life, and to have embraced that precarity and to have then developed it into something stable and sustainable. I found that a most a most extraordinary evolution, and you have actually traced that with such fascinating detail. Can you, I mean, not everyone will have read the book, so can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, Alkazi, as soon as he started doing theatre with Sultan Padamsee, immediately felt that these rehearsals were being conducted in drawing rooms of their homes, etc., and that theatre, if it was going to make an impact, would have to become professional. This could not be a sort of a Sunday hobby or evening hobby. And he was very keen that people be trained. And the idea of training came to him, and he thought to himself, Bobby unfortunately died very soon, but had left behind a group of about 150 young people who were very, very keen on theatre. And so Alkazi, at the young age of 22, I am amazed at the age, because I was born when my father was 22 only, and here is this young man feeling responsible for these 150 people and saying, I must go abroad and train myself. So he goes abroad, and not only did my father go abroad to study theatre more professionally, but by this time he had befriended Nissim Ezekiel, who was later to become such a famous poet. Nissim became his very fast friend. Francis Newton Sousa, who became the famous artist, M.F. Hussain. All these were of the same generation and the same age. And he told Nissim, listen, Nissim, you have to come to England with me. Roshan, his wife, by that time my father was married to Roshan, my mother, and said, Roshan and I are going to go to England, so please, you must come along. And the amazing thing is, Nissim said, I don't have the money. I don't have the money to buy, you know. And so Alkazi said, I think we should sort this out. So what he did is, amazingly, he went to his father and he said to his father, a very conservative Saudi Arab, he said, Dad, I think it's very important for Nissim Ezekiel, my friend, to come with me to England, because, you know, this is where we are going to study about what is modern, what is progressive, and do you think you could buy the ticket for him by boat? So my grandfather paid 620 rupees for Nissim's fare to England. And Nissim went to England, and they all stayed together, and soon Sousa came there. So it was a step-by-step Alkazi. I bring this point up of Nissim because Alkazi was already gathering a group of people. He wanted an artist, he wanted a person from literature, he was from theatre. My mother was a costume designer already by then. So he wanted a group of artists to come back to India after imbibing things of modernity abroad and come back to India and share those ideas with the rest of the world.
I think the point that we need to remember really is the time that we are speaking of. This is not today, where, as I said, mobility is taken for granted. As you say, they had to go by boat. I mean, these were not easy journeys, and they were not journeys that everybody was able to make. What is striking is the conviction and is the commitment that actually made it possible. I can't imagine any friend of mine, a writer, saying, okay, I'll come along with you because you think I should be there.
Yeah. No.
I mean, frankly, how many of us could even think of making a request like that? But this, I do believe that this was part of the progressives also.
Right.
They were all, in a sense, reinforcing each other and reinforcing what each one of them was doing. And this probably was the most remarkable element of that modernism. That
Right. Alkazi's modernism was not only modernism about theatre. He felt all the arts should feed into one another. A knowledge of all the arts was important to any one art form. So this idea of a total theatre, where the visual, the audio, the sound, the literature part of it, the text, should all be melded together to create the dramatic experience, theatrical experience. And therefore, he was always interested in people from the other art forms. And it is with this idea that he even structured the whole syllabus, the formal syllabus, which he then put into action at the National School of Drama when he went there in the 60s.
So that was my next question, actually, that clearly that informal space of Bombay, where he and all the others had been attempting their progressive practice, was not sufficient to realize this totality of experience that was his great endeavor. And so clearly the move to set up the National School of Drama, where it could be housed, it could be initiated, it could be sustained, became an important step for him.
Absolutely.
Setting up that institution, which survives to this day largely because of his vision, I would say.
Right. So, yes, absolutely. Al-Qazi always wished to formalize this training methodology into something sustainable, into something reachable to larger numbers from different language groups from across the country. So, this whole attempt to institutionalize and formalize was also inspired by the ideas of Tagore. Tagore's ideas in Shantiniketan of bringing all the arts together to create a kind of a liberal arts program in the teaching even of the fine arts, which it included dance, which included music, which included theatre. So Al-Qazi was very inspired, in fact, and in fact had in England in those early years attended a summer course at Dartington Hall, where Zora Sehgal, for example, had gone, where Uday Shankar had taught, and it was a wonderful school on an estate run by two very famous people, the Elmhurst, which Al-Qazi then saw in practice how all the arts could come together in one space. And yeah.
Including pottery.
Including pottery, yeah. Yes, absolutely, ceramics.
So at National School of Drama, from productions that I've seen myself, one of the most innovative things that I think he did was to translate a great deal of European plays, particularly European, into Hindi.
Right.
And now, this was quite an undertaking. We're a little more accustomed to translation today, albeit not very satisfactorily. But at that point, it wouldn't have been easy.
No, not at all, not at all. The whole idea was actually Al-Qazi in his Bombay years practically went through. What I forgot to mention is his interest was not only in training students, but in training an audience. The idea was to train an audience to appreciate modernity. So everything that he did with two audiences in mind, the students who would actually act on the stage or direct, and then there would be a large number of talks and etc. On literature, on the visual arts. There would be exhibitions on art in Bombay, and he was training the Bombay audience to attune their senses to appreciate abstraction, what is modernity, etc., etc. So, sorry, what was the question? In Delhi. Yes, the idea of translation. So, having taken an audience through a lot of Western drama in English in Bombay, once he reaches Delhi, Al-Qazi then moves towards translating all these great plays from the Greeks to Shakespeare to Molière to the absurdists, right down the line to Ibsen, Chekhov, Strindberg, etc., etc. And now they are available to, and he produces those plays. He produces those plays, directs those plays, and so the audience is slowly getting used to what is the idea. Don't forget, none of these plays had ever been done. These plays from the Western pantheon had never been attempted, except for Shakespeare, of course, in colleges. So now all this is available, but more importantly, I think he is also trying to get home to the fact that the new modern Indian woman, I think thematically, Al-Qazi is slowly gearing towards a selection of plays which move in two directions. One direction is to go to our myths in plays like Andha Yug, Dhanveer Bharti's Andha Yug, which he produces several times. Then to go back to a play like Hori, and then to go to a new Hindi playwright like Mohan Rakesh with Ashad Ka Ek Din, One Day in Ashad. These are the three important plays that he does in Delhi.
Tughlaq?
And of course Tughlaq, Girish Karnad's Tughlaq. And these are then played. So the audience is getting a full kind of rounded kind of experience. And theatre is played in Delhi and in Bombay every weekend. So this is very important to have a consistency, that there is a performance to see, there is something to see, there are brochure notes to refer to, there are people to draw in now into this act of translation. And many of them are his own students, whom he encourages that you should start translating for what we need to do and share with the rest of the world.
I think one of the more important contributions as well was to train a whole generation of actors, because of course the ones we know now that went into film were all at NSD. There was, I mean, I've even forgotten all the names, but Nasiruddin Shah certainly, and Surekha Sikri, and
Manohar
Sheth, and Seema Biswas. I mean, so many who started at NSD, and it was really, I think, his, as I said, his very radical transformation of the scene that was responsible for that. I want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that what he really changed is not that he produced actors who could delve deeply, and this was something new for the film industry, that suddenly actors were analyzing their roles. Actors were trying to look at the whole role and their relationship with the role in a close way or in a distanced way or whichever way. So suddenly you had a very thinking actor. Actors were never thinking beings, they were stars. Our actors on the stage only knew about the stars of the Marathi theatre or stars of the Hindi film industry, and a lot depended on their own personas and what they'd have a sort of a takya kalam about them. They'd have a particular way of flicking their hair or a particular way of speaking. But suddenly you got nuanced performances. And this is what the NSD training did for them. Large numbers of them, and it continues to today. I think he radically changed what acting meant in the film industry, for sure.
I want to ask you a question that's a little more personal. As a theatre person yourself, because of course you have followed very ably and very brilliantly in his footsteps, what were the particular challenges that you faced while writing this as a theatre person? Meaning, when you were writing about his productions, which you do in considerable detail, when you were writing about the choices he made, or when you were looking at his notes, the notes that he made for each production, how did, I mean, did you just faithfully report it or write it, or did you actually invest something of your own experience as a theatre person?
I practically saw every production of my father's myself. So I have been one of the few people right from childhood watching rehearsals, sitting on the floor and watching rehearsals take place in our own home. So I've had that as a very added, it's not something I'm reading about or notes he's reading about. Don't forget, I had a mother who was a costume designer, and she and I used to incessantly, together with my husband Nisar, sit after dinner and discuss each play as I grew up. So I had, we were always very critical of my father's work. And we would discuss it. My dad didn't discuss his work with anyone, but we discussed his work amongst ourselves, because I think it was part of my mother wanting us to think about things in a sort of an observant manner and in a distanced manner.
So that critical stuff doesn't come through in the book.
Oh, it doesn't?
Those critical discussion, no. That's why I wanted to ask you, as a theatre person now, in your maturity, when you're writing, is different from when you were discussing at the dining table.
Yes. No, absolutely. I was very keen to look at my father as part of the theatre movement. I never began this book with the idea of writing anything personal about him. This didn't enter my... I always thought I would write something about his work. But then as the pen moved and as one began to write, I found myself creeping in, and that I'm sitting over there and watching a rehearsal, or I'm doing something, or I'm talking to one of his actors. So the personal did come in, but looking at it from today, I can absolutely see where he was coming from, because that was my interest. What were the influences on his work? We have to wrap up?
No, please finish.
Oh. Okay. So, yes. So, I look at it in a distance manner, and of course today when I look back at his work, I may find some of his work dated. I may, because, you know, I had moved on from doing the kind of theatre he was doing. In fact, I never did the kind of theatre he was doing. I had my own trajectory, and but I could see him as an important figure, a very important figure in the stepping stone towards spreading the message of theatre across the country. So, you know, there's Alkazi, the creative director. There's Alkazi, who is the institution builder.
Sure.
You know, there are very many aspects of him. It's not just...
Yes. Since we're being told to
wrap up.
Yes, okay. But I just want to say two things. I'll leave one question in the air, which was the most difficult chapter for you to write. But what I want to say is that we have simply not been able to cover even a fraction of what is in the book, because there is a whole life after NSD, which is as an art patron and collector, as someone very Alkazi, as someone extremely active and pioneering again in the visual arts form, as an archivist, which I think was a seminal contribution he made, because we are not archivists. Indians don't believe in archiving. And here was a man who understood the great significance of doing that. I did want to talk to you a little bit about that, but I'm sorry that we don't have the time. And one other thought that I'd like to leave with all of us, and with you as well, which is this very delicate balance between, for a biographer, especially a biographer who happens to be a daughter of the subject, between intimacy and distance. You need both. If you don't have an intimacy, you cannot write a life. And if you don't have distance, you cannot have perspective. So in both aspects, I think that Holding Time Captive has managed to do something very, very difficult. So I congratulate you, Amal, because I know it's very easy as a biographer to gloss over all the uncomfortable things. It's also very easy as a biographer to give in to sensationalizing. And you know, what you reveal and what you conceal become a very important part of the telling, and then that life is in black and white. I remember saying to Nayanthara Sehgal, whose biography I wrote, what she thought of the book, and she said, but it's your book. It's not my book. And so Holding Time Captive is your book.
Yes, absolutely.
It may be about your father, but it's your book. So we can open it up now for questions.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session. And I would like to ask you, Andha Yug we saw on the AV, we have also seen modern theatre groups adapt it and to connect with the modern audience. So what is it that needs to be kept in consideration when we are adapting a classical play to connect with the modern audience?
Well, I think there are many important questions that plays throw up at different times. I mean, any literature speaks to different, if it's good literature, it speaks to different generations. And Andha Yug especially seems very timely right from the 70s onward in our country, because it asks the question of what is morality, and do we follow any morality at all in our political lives, in our daily lives. So what is the morality that we are following? It questions that, and it is a question which different levels of the characters question, right from the Pehredars, the common man, to the Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. So, you know, it is one of those plays which is open to interpretation repeatedly and is very powerful. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Related to this, when you...
We can't hear you. You have to put it on.
Is it on? Yes. When you present a classical play,
Yes.
which reflects that time, there may be prejudices, racism, anti-Semitism, the way they depict women and so on. When you present it to a modern audience, are they trained? Your father trained the audiences, you said, but are they trained to appreciate it, or do they apply contemporary, current standards to
Absolutely.
judging the play? Is that a challenge?
Absolutely. I think that when Kazi did Andha Yug in his first production was in, I think, 1963. His second production of it, which I showed a picture of, with a lot of Japanese influence on the costumes, etc. That was in the 70s, in the mid-70s. And I think that what Al-Kazi said is that these characters, Draupadi and Dhritarashtra and Sanjay, etc., all the characters were not depicted at all like looking like Ravi Varma paintings. This is the first thing he had to do, is the vision we have of all these people dressed in a particular way and denoting something or the other has to be wiped out. And therefore, he gave a sort of a very primitive look and a very simple, abstracted look to the very look of the play, so that immediately it resonates that you are talking about something ancient, but he tried to denude it of the sort of Victorian prudery that had already crept into Ravi Varma's visualization, especially of women. So yes, that very starkness was very essential. The kind of music that he used, the kind of costumes and jewelry, and of course he did the whole thing at a ruin, at Firoz Shah Kotla. It was not done on the proscenium stage. Some palace was not painted on the walls. They were the actual ruins of Firoz Shah Kotla, which already reminded people who came there, the Delhi audiences, that we are talking about a war between brothers. And already the refugees from Pakistan had already lived over there in Firoz Shah Kotla. And so the site itself gave so much to the audience to understand the meaning of the play.
I don't think anyone before Al-Kazi had used a fort or a ruin as the theatre, as the space in which the story would unfold. And that I remember seeing Andha Yug when it was in Purana Killa in the mid-70s.
Yes.
And it was an absolutely arresting experience. You could never forget it, because the space itself resonated with that tragedy. And in the end, it was that tragic, the entire tragedy of that war that remained with you. And part of it was, of course, the setting.
Yes, the setting and the fact that you're under the sky, you're in the open, it's all very elemental. You have rocks, you have the breeze, you have the sky, you have the stars. All those added to the experience, also the pitted walls. And so there are many elements which can evoke something without spelling it out. It creates the experience. The space creates the experience also.
Thank you so much. You mentioned Alkazi's journeys to England as part of learning about modernity. But already in Europe, there was fundamental crisis of modernity, and in India itself. So therefore, this journey with modern, in what way it engaged with crisis of modernity, and a long genealogy in India about rooted modernities, including Tagore. My second quick query is...
Including?
Tagore.
Tagore.
Secondly, your reference to critique, you and your mother being a critic of your father, also points to the kind of a social circle of you portrayed a dimension of intimacy among the people. But the kind of struggle, critique and creativity, the dialogue, the debate and contestation that went on, that formed this creative formation, if you could kindly put a light on that.
Yes, of course. I mean, there was constant in the art world, there was a constant debate going on. In the academies, there was a constant debate going on about, in our search for our roots, for our Indian identity, post-independence, what should we be going back to? And there was, on the one side, let's go back to Sanskrit drama, let's go back to those things which are our roots. And on the other side, there were people like Alkazi saying, yes, we can go back to them, but we also have to understand the place we are in the world today. So modernity was the result of massive wars and the chaos which came out of those wars. So it was in trying to be able to bring that reality, not necessarily European wars, but even our own partition of our country, etc., into question. And now, what were we going to do to create a new modernity? So there were debates going on all the time, and the book has several of these debates, even in the academies, in one of the chapters, as the Sangeet Natak Academy is being formed and the cultural policy of the country is being questioned. Then you see the point of view of people like Mulk Raj Anand, you see Dr. Raghavan from here, promoting Sanskrit drama, etc., etc. And you see Alkazi, on the other hand, rooting for a totally new kind of Indian modernity.
Yeah, I think,
one critique or the tragedy that we have to think about now and be reminded about it when the next election comes is the state of NSD now. The state of NSD now. Yeah.
You are asking what is the state
No,
of
no,
NSD?
no. We have to remember the tragedy that is now.
Yes.
And it was a man, artist from Saudi Arabia, who was allowed to start this movement of theatre in this country, and the National School of Drama. And where we are now is something we have to think. Just think, that's enough. Thank you.
well, I think there's been a lot to think about, and not half of what was said was actually discussed with the audience, but hopefully all of you will have a chance to dip into the book and be enriched, as I must say I was. Thank you very much, Amal.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Amal Alana with Ritu Menon.